lot of big businesses have been built by outsiders because they see the industry how it should be, not how it currently is. I do not cook. I do not want to be in the kitchen. Like, that's like the worst thing ever. My conversation with Heinin propelled this idea into motion. We both are very much doers. And instead of just like faffing around, we were like, right, okay, let's test this. Does this make sense? We've raised over $3 million so far. We're going to make this a big success. We really care. Like, I care so much about getting this insane experience at affordable prices in the homes of customers and to give so much money to chefs and actually change their lives.
Welcome to the Bay HQ, where we inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today we have with us Siddhi Mittal, who's a co-founder and co-CEO of yhangry. It's a marketplace for private chefs. How are you doing today?
Very, very good. And thank you for having me.
So we've had a good chat before we started recording today. And it was quite interesting, your background, because you come from like India originally, and then you moved to America, and now you're here. But can you walk us through that journey and like your confidence on there? So did you ever believe when you were growing up that one day you'd be where you are today?
I grew up in Agra, which is actually a very small city where Taj Mahal is one of the 7 wonders of the world in India. And I think at that time, I actually thought I would only ever be in Agra all of my life. I left Agra in 10th grade because my father is an entrepreneur and he decided to move to Delhi for more business opportunity. And when I moved to Delhi, I had the biggest culture shock of my life. Like, instead of women wearing like full suits, they were wearing skirts and tops. For me, it was like a very huge culture change. And it was like the first time I was exposed to like a large city and the possibilities of what could be. I would say, however, it's only until I got to America for my undergrad. So I went to Columbia for artificial intelligence and computer science. And it's only when I got there and I realized, wow, like you could do anything possible. I didn't even know like the things people were doing out there. Because even though I grew up in Delhi where things are quite modern, and this is like, I'm talking about 2009. Like, obviously this is like after the Lehman crisis, and like, let's be clear, things are obviously a lot more modern now, but back in 2009, all the opportunities sort of existed. But for me, I had no idea if I would ever do that, or would I just be a housewife? It sounds really crazy. But then obviously fast forward.
Even at university, you were thinking that?
In high school.
Okay.
But the moment I entered Columbia, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I cannot wait. And then obviously I was like, do I want to be a developer or other things? And I'm relatively loud. I love sort of like fast-paced environments, and I researched a bunch of stuff, and I was like, trader, that sounds like something I would love. It sounds like it's analytical, really fast-paced, and I sort of made that transition, and there was no looking back. So I think once I decided I could be a trader, I think in America, everything opened up. But I would say up until India, almost up until even going to college, I don't know. I don't think I could see all the possibilities that existed in this world.
So you picked AI as well, right? And you did that before it was cool. Now it's a buzzword and a bit of a fad.
Yes.
But back then, like, it was still something which a lot of people thought was science fiction in a way. What made you go for AI?
The honest answer is my sister, who's very clever and also another founder, she was from Stanford. She told me I had to do computer science. So I was like, sure, I will. And it just sounded cool. I was like, wow, that sounds very futuristic. Let's do it. Now I wouldn't say it because I'm like, God, there's like a big gap to bridge. But yeah, it made a lot of sense even back then because I remember like my senior year assignment, you were building this program, a game, which self-taught itself the answer, which was wild. And it was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Yeah, I think it seemed cool. I thought, why not?
But yeah, then obviously decided to go into the trading side of things. And you were there for a while, right? And you were, actually, I want to go back a second because you said you were like very confident and loud at this point, but you had that transition from Agra where you said it was more of a kind of small town vibe to the city. Did that confidence come straight away, or did it take you time to adjust and grow into that?
I'd say growing up, pretty confident in the sense where my parents kind of raised us to just not care, do what you want to. But I had a huge confidence drop when we moved to Delhi because I was suddenly exposed to this whole new city and I felt very invisible or new. And I just felt so like sort of frightened and I wanted to not speak at all because I was like, I just don't want to be noticed. I actually found my voice back when I went to Columbia. And then I was like, great, let's smash this. But it's funny, I think every transition either made me bolder or made me kind of like be a bit more nervous and kind of watch. Because I remember when I actually transitioned into trading, it was like the most brutal environment I remember. It was insane. Like people would obviously use the F word very easily, but it was more like I once came in 10 minutes later and one of my bosses, I won't say who, just looked at me and went, where the fuck were you? Like, Jesus Christ, send out your fucking runs. God, what have you been doing? And I just kind of froze in that moment and I was like, oh my God. Like every second was so intense that you just kind of had to build a lot of thick skin. And at that point, I had a confidence drop. And I remember just being more scared and being like, right, okay, I'm going to get through this. But then once I got through it, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is great. This is exactly what I'm built for. But I've actually never spoken about to anyone the time where initially I was I didn't have a lot of confidence. I just kind of like waited and watched and hoped no one asked me too many questions because I really had no idea what was going on.
I guess one thing you might have realized as you've gone through life is that a lot of the times people don't really know what's going on. And you can sometimes think they do. And it's as you get to that point yourself, you realize, yes, there's skill involved, but it's also a lot of it's the confidence to try things that you don't know how to do and learn how to do them.
You know, the confidence competence loop. Someone just articulated this the other day and I was like, that absolutely makes sense. Only when you do something, do it enough, you then feel, right, I actually know I'm great at this. And that gives you confidence. And I think that's very similar. And that happened again once we started yhangry. At the beginning, I don't know, I pretended I knew, I had no clue. And now like we've done it, like you build confidence. Yeah. As you do things.
What gave you the idea to move to London as well originally, right? Because you're in India, then you're in Colombia, and then what made you...
I got deported.
Okay, yeah.
So I didn't actually, I see that as a shorthand, but I would have. In short, what happened, every immigrant in America knows it's a disaster to get visas. I actually was an engineering student, so technically I had the ability to have like extensions and stuff. But it ended up that the bank I decided to work for was British headquartered. I didn't have that extension. There were issues. And then basically, long story short, I had to choose between going back to India or choosing to come to London. And at which point I was like, man, I'm just going to choose to come to London and pretend I have a choice. So actually overnight, within 7 days, I left everything in New York. I actually left my apartment exactly how it was. Barclays got everything packed up. Like my bed airlifted. My clothes were in the cupboard. I just left the country and within 7 days I was here and then I sort of restarted my life.
And how did you find that? So I guess you're still here, so hopefully you like it here. How did you find that move from New York to London and the cultural differences
Very crazy. So I think people ask me a lot when I moved to New York, oh, did you not have a culture shock? I'm like, no, I love it. Like I loved Colombia. It just made sense. When I moved to London, I had a big culture shock. And I understood what culture shock is. Because I'd speak to someone and I'd be like, oh my God, like great. And then I'd sort of be expected to be invited to dinner or I don't know. And it just never happened. And I was like, this is so confusing because if this was America, people just go along, like groups just get formed. Whereas coming to London, it was actually a very like isolating experience because I didn't realize British are polite and nice always, but then can be quite abrupt and curt. And then the second bizarre thing was someone will say something and I'd start to laugh and then I'd stop being like, oh my God, they're saying that seriously. And at some point, I had to Google dry humor and I was like, oh, right, what is happening? So I think there were some really clear differences in how people operated, which actually, once it impacts your social life, you start to be like, wait, what's happening here? So yeah, I would say it was a very different experience. And once I got over that again, it was great. People here are awesome, but they really take a while to get used to.
It's one of the things I think sometimes people don't necessarily realize is that even though London is a huge city, people can be quite lonely here. And like you said, it's sometimes where people have their groups or their cliques and things like that, and it's hard to break into that. And also, it's one of the things we're trying to do as well when we do our events, like open up a bit, get people to meet each other, because it is sad how many people move here, think, oh, there's all this stuff going on, but then they struggle to make real friends. So it's a problem which needs to be solved, and hopefully there's a lot of people out there trying to do that.
The thing is, like, when I moved here, it's almost like once you're here long enough, and either if you're working or you're involved in a few things, you'll then inevitably meet people and they will become your circle or social network or whatever. But when you move here, yeah, you're right. It's just very isolating because even though there's so many people, who do you speak to and how? I remember having like lunch and dinner by myself and I was like, I kind of love this. I just go with my book. But that's really bizarre. Like, when's the last time you had dinner by yourself? But I did that a lot in London when I came. I was like, okay, cool. Got no friends, but I'm going to have a great dinner by myself. And then again.
But it's obviously over time, you then did build those friends, and obviously now things are better.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Now it's been 11 years. Ooh, wait. 2013, 10 years exactly. And I think obviously I have finance friends, and I have a partner, and I have, loads of friends from loads of different circles. We did YC, we did like Google for Startups, and loads of networks where we accumulated some great-minded people. And then some of them have stuck through as very close friends versus acquaintances, etc.
And so you're still working for Box because you moved here, right?
Yes.
When did the idea for you to start up your own business come from? Like, where did that spark come from?
So I moved here in 2013, almost right after I graduated. Barclays, I did for around 6.5 years. The idea that I just needed help with someone cooking was just always there. I was like, oh, can someone just find me something? I'm so stressed and so busy. And I hate having delivery or restaurant food. I just needed someone to like help me sort out my food. And I think I've tried it in the past and I was like, oh, just nothing great exists, like whatever. So that was like kind of always in my mind. The sort of initial inception of this idea really was like 2019. I met Heinin, which is my now co-CEO, co-founder, on the trading floor. So I was a trader and she was in sales. We got along so well because as she joined from Goldman Sachs, she came in as one of like the junior most youngest hedge fund sales, doing really well. I was like, okay, awesome. I have like another incredible person I can like be lunch buddies with. And we were in actually Germany for a client visit. And this is after dinner. This is like 1 a.m. I just like go to a room and then we're chatting. We're like, how are things going? This is really fun. And that's when we were like, oh my gosh, we would actually love to do something different. And that's when we were brainstorming ideas. And I was like, look, this is something that's always been on my mind. She immediately said, like, this sounds amazing. Let's do it. And that was like, yeah. And I think my conversation with Heinin kind of propelled this idea into motion. She was one of the first people who was like, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that was like, that was our first steps.
And so once you had that idea, right? So one thing having the idea and having the enthusiasm. Where did you go from there? Like, how did you actually start to make it a reality?
For me, it was really important actually to meet a co-founder. So I think Heinin's like very pivotal in the story and everything starts with her and me together. After that, I think we both are very much doers. And instead of just like faffing around, we were like, right, okay, let's test this. Does this make sense? So sort of the first 30 days after, we got we had a PDF. We wrote down a bunch of dishes. And then funnily enough, none of us are actually British. Like originally. So there were no British dishes on that menu. It was like Indian curries, like Chinese dishes, pad thai. And we created that menu and we sent it to our friends. And meanwhile, we found a chef who was like, cool, yeah, I'm happy to actually batch cook meals. Because at that point, the idea started with like batch cooking because that's what we wanted for ourselves. And we sent it over to our friends on WhatsApp. We were like, place your order now. Can you please try the service at cost? And people were like, oh, sure, like whatever. Then they tried it and we did like 15, 20 of these. So we just like logistically reached out to every single person, got these dates in the diary. We were like, go, go, go. We know enough people in finance. Like, let's go. Everyone has the money to book this. Let's go. It's just a matter of getting the dates and then testing it. And I think after sort of like the following month, we had done 15, 20 of these. We were like, right, okay, like that's not working. That's working. Actually, people are now inviting their friends over because they have too much food in their fridge. What's happening here? And then slowly it was like, people are actually using this when people are around. So, it's kind of like dinner party. That's how customers are using us. So that's actually how we got started. It was very basic.
So it's kind of like you're the consumers of the product yourself, right, as well?
Yeah. So we sit at slightly different spectrums. Like Heinin is much more of like a foodie. She knows her wine. She does her like wine exam. She like understands food more. I'm actually vegetarian. I do not cook. I do not want to be in the kitchen. Like, that's like the worst thing ever. I actually would create a group for like liberating South Asian women from kitchen if I could. Like, it's a real thing. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I should be in the kitchen cooking. So I grew up never cooking. And my mom told me you never need to. And yeah, for me, like cooking is just more like morally, I don't want to be asked if I cook because if I'm going to be asked, my partner who's male better be asked if he cooks. Yeah. So I'm not a cook. Heinin is. Yeah. And somehow we are both the consumers of the product, yes.
But Heinin, was she cooking for you were getting a private chef to do it, or was she cooking it?
No, she was not. No. Okay. The private chef was,
Because what I was getting at there is like, it's interesting because neither of you were chefs in some way, but then
No.
to go ahead with this idea.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think one of the key benefits you had there is because you had this network of people in finance who'd be wanting to try out the product. And I guess what other skills do you think from your past in the banking background helped you with yhangry?
So firstly, I think a lot of big businesses have been built by outsiders because they see the industry how it should be, not how it currently is. And if we were in hospitality, we'd be like, oh, but that's an issue, that's an issue, that's an issue. But we came into this industry thinking it makes no sense. Like chefs are actually one of the lowest paid professions out there. Yet people think private chefs are fully inaccessible. What is going on here? Let's bridge this gap. And I think that unique insight got us into this. As for our skills from finance, oh, so many. I think having thick skin, like being shouted at, screamed at, like the kind of jobs you do is insane. You have a lot of risk tolerance. Like I was running a book with over 500 million worth of risk assets like every day, P&L swings, a lot of volatility. And that really kind of gave you the sense like, yeah, of course, like I know how to sort of balance risk, or I understand what that means. Fundraising, like sort of the know-how of what's actually commercial, what price you should raise at, how to like forecast these cash flows. Probably even speaking to people. Like Heinin comes from sales. I was a trader. We were speaking to clients all the time. And that's like selling bonds. But how different are chefs and bonds? It's like the same thing.
Basically the same thing, yeah.
And then I think overall I'd say there's just like a certain amount of street smart that finance or trading or sales as like a profession really gives you. And you've worked hard, you've worked a lot of hours, you've been overpaid probably for what you're doing. But I think all of that combined really set us up for this sort of like, we can just do whatever attitude. So when we started, at no point we were like, oh, we don't know how to do that. We didn't know how to do anything, but we knew we could do everything because it was just a matter of figuring it out. And I think all of that sort of stems from the hustle or like the training finance, or at least trading gave us on the floor.
And I think what's interesting as well is that sometimes people think, oh, like I've got really good at one career, I can't move now because those skills aren't going to be worth anything. And what you've just shown there is just how people listening right now, maybe within banking or whatever professional industry, those skills do transfer. And like you said, you don't need to necessarily be from that background, but those skills can work in other ways, and that helps you as an outsider. And once you did that kind of trial period, how did you then think about like maybe this is our full-time gig? Like when did that mindset shift start to happen?
Look, really good question, mostly because like it's not as easy as I make it look right now. I remember in that moment, it was psychologically one of the hardest things to make the leap. And before even we made the leap, it's like there was so much fear and doubt. Could we crack it? Like what happens if we quit? What are we going to do? And I think it took a help from a lot of our people close to us. And actually my partner, Pierre, like he was amazing. He was like, look, why are you so stressed about money? You have a lot of saved. Worst case, you'll be able to come back. I'm already doing this. Like two of us don't need to earn like a big paycheck in finance. And also, what is the fear here? And when I peeled back the fears layer by layer, the last layer really is sort of fear of failure. Mm-hmm. And at that point you go, right, but that's not a problem. Let's go. So I think for some reason that decision felt very hard. We had to make sure I will quit, Heinin, and like I wanted to make sure Heinin will quit. We both also respected our like parents a lot, and especially our fathers. Like both of them are businessmen, which is very different to entrepreneur. Entrepreneur feels very sexy, but businessman is like hardcore. Like, you know, you really fought your way to like earn a living. And they've done really well. Her father is like Chinese, based in China / Germany. Mine is in India. And we were like, right, we're going to fly back to our homes, convince our parents / dad, and then quit. Mm-hmm. And I remember she went back and her dad was like, no pressure, no diamonds. So it was like the blessing, let's go. My dad had a very funny reaction. So he's a risk taker. He's awesome. And when I actually started finance, he was like, I'm not sure, that's peanuts. Like, how are you going to like make a living for yourself? That's really good. And I was like, Dad, come on, give me some time. And when I went back and I was like, Dad, look, we've had this idea. Like, we think we're going to start a business. And he immediately went, but your paycheck's pretty big. Like, why are you looking to quit? And I just went, need to do something different, want to build something. We really think there's like opportunity here. And I'd like to take that risk. And then after he wasn't convinced, I was like, look, if it's not this, I'm going to go get an MBA. And that's going to cost $200K, like in America. At which point he got the numbers. He was like, okay, you can go and start a business and then That's better, I guess, than paying all this money to get an MBA. Not saying MBA is not good at all. It's like a very, it's amazing and it's a privilege for whoever can afford it. But yeah, I think that kind of consolidated him giving me the blessing. And we needed that to psychologically know that everyone in our lives that really matters and wants, our success, aka our fathers, give us their go ahead.
I had an interesting experience when I quit my job because my dad encouraged me to quit my job before I was ready.
I love that.
So I was like, oh, but what about, like, it was opposite argument, but like, oh, but what about stability? But what about this and this and this? Like, oh, you'll be fine, just do it. Just like, you'll be happier quitting, like doing your own thing than working. So just do it. And I think that confidence, like you said, did make a big difference to me. And I do wonder where I would have quit if he'd said, oh, but like, I don't think it's a good idea and stuff like that. And
you need some enablers in your life, whoever that might be, to help you take that leap.
With that as well, because it's interesting how you said, because it's interesting because you're both co-founders, right? That you had to make that decision mutually and make sure you agree upon it, because if one person wants to take the leap and the other person doesn't, it creates that bit of friction. And you're co-CEOs as well, right? How does that relationship work? Like, how do you split up your responsibilities and your roles within that?
It's so fluid. It's so amazing. When we started, it was very much a matter of, cool, let's see where our skills land. We worked a lot on like communication and trust, because actually when you start off on a trading floor, you don't know actually how to communicate in a way that's productive. And we realized that very quickly, because we'd started like, there'll be like a question and we'll be like, this is what I think. No, this is what I think. Every statement started with a no. It was wild, but we were just replicating a trading floor. On a trading floor, it's just like a battle ring. You have it out and then like the loudest person or like the best argument wins immediately and then you move on. But P&L there is instant, whereas here we're building a product for a long time. So we realized that pretty quickly. And I think those are like the fundamental skills we obviously improved to become really good co-founders. But then it was very, very natural. Like I come from a tech background. Obviously, I did trading, working with a lot of data. Like product is naturally where I sit in. And I was like, this is awesome, like building the product, where things go. And for her, she comes from a sales background. She's more of a foodie. So she naturally sort of evolved into growth. And I think we just very naturally kind of cover areas that are overlapping. For example, fundraising, actually in the past, we've run it parallelly because we think it's faster. It's really boring sometimes going through like a million calls, and it's actually very taxing. And people always say it's so disruptive to the business. Someone needs to be back in the business. But we flipped it around. It's actually really fun talking to people and telling them what you're doing because it's so exciting. It might not be very fun if you can't do your actual work. So we actually run fundraising in parallel. We just have parallel conversations. It gets done like 2x faster in half of the time. And it's really fun because we actually had some great conversations. And we're always coming back and saying, actually, that was a great conversation. Do we need to tweak something here? Should we rethink that part? And I almost think if only I did that, how would the product evolve as quickly as it does right now? So look, I think we both, work really well. I think there's like a lot more research on how like co-CEOs work very well. Like Harvard put out a study recently. It's still very new. We actually had the privilege of meeting some co-CEO female founders at Slush recently. Incredible. And I think watching them on the stage, we were like, that's how we feel. It's really hard to describe the way we work, but it's just like, she knows what I'm thinking before I say it. It's just, everything is covered. Yeah, it's very easy. I don't know how people do it without it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I think it's one thing that's always, it all depends on the strength of your relationship, right? Because it doesn't almost matter what the titles are if you don't get along with people.
Correct.
Because you can have whatever title, it could be co-CEO, CTO, whatever. But if there's a fundamental thing that you disagree on values-wise, there's always going to be that friction.
Yes.
And you mentioned there about fundraising, right? So obviously you guys have raised money, and you've raised money as obviously two women not from the UK, who obviously aren't white. So that's quite a rare thing, right? And like, how much have you raised, and how do you think you were able to raise that?
We've raised over $3 million so far. Look, although on the face of it, like you pointed out, like we probably, if you start to look at us as numbers, are a very minority stat. But to us, it's not about stats. Like, we know we can do this, what we bring to the table, and look, we're going to make this a big success. We really care. Like, I care so much about getting this insane experience at affordable prices in the homes of customers, and to give so much money to chefs and actually change their lives. And fundraising is just like a way to grow this so we can impact more lives. chefs and also actually change a lot of customers' lives and make them have this insane, amazing product in their homes. So yeah, I think fundraising is just like a means to an end, and we've just approached it very like mathematically. We've used our connections where we can, and we also did Y Combinator last year, and that sort of helped. And actually, conversations after that also changed quite a lot because it's a label, and it's a label that really helps you. And I think it was useful because at that point, you don't have to say, I think the biggest thing it changes is people don't think, oh, you're like in the catering business. They're like, okay, right, you're building a food tech platform. You must be because you're YC. And it just makes it easier.
And yeah, I guess that framing side of things, right? Because when people are trying to raise money, it's also trying to decide whether or not you should raise money, right? So what made you decide, okay, this is a business which we want to raise money for rather than go the bootstrap route? And I guess it's to do with the tech side of things. You needed that investment there.
So to be honest, when we started, we were very bootstrapped. Actually, Dragon's Den asked us this question. And at that time, Heinen and I panicked and looked at each other and we just used the number 10K. I think it was less than 10K. It was like nothing. Whilst we started off bootstrapped, and that's when we got into Google for Startups. There are a lot of labels here, but Google for Startups, the Female Founders Program, at some point we were like, right, actually, raising a little bit of round actually allows us to build a better product and actually go a little bit faster than so slow. So then we did that. And then progressively it was like, right, actually, by having some money or decent amount of money gives you the ability to just move faster, and it's a competitive advantage. So we did bootstrap for a little bit while we were figuring things out. COVID was pretty shaky. But then once we got the opportunity, we've always known we want to build a very big business. Like the goal isn't like a lifestyle business here. We want to build a global tech unicorn. And in order to get there, raising a round really allows you to figure out things in a more sensible fashion. And actually, like when we were bootstrapped, and this is like really, oh God, like right at the beginning, you don't want to pay for little stuff which you're meant to pay for. Like you're meant to invest in your product where you can. You don't do that because you think, oh gosh, it's so much money. But once you raise it around, you're like, right, how am I going to deploy this capital? It really takes away, it increases objectivity. So yeah.
So you mentioned there about the global ambitions there. Can you just tell us more about that before we go into quick fire questions? Like, what are the ambitions? Like, what excites you about the journey you've got to come?
Yeah, so I think top level, definitely the goal here is to build a company, for example, Airbnb, but for private chefs. I think it's the easiest way to visualize it. And the vision, like in 10 years would be if you're anywhere in the world and you want some great food, you're with friends, you're with family, or maybe you just wanted some meal prep for yourself, an incredible chef just rocks up with food and sorts you out. And that's all at the tap of a button. On the flip side, everywhere people are either they're chefs or aspiring cooks or home cooks. There's so many people, like our country is obsessed with cooking. These people cannot monetize as well. Why is it that chefs are one of the lowest paid? It actually breaks my heart, and they have terrible restaurant kitchen conditions. So globally, you can put a lot more money in their pocket. You can actually make it so easy for a chef to say, actually, great, today I'm going to travel to Italy, but I still have a job. And I think just making sure that the entire catering side of industry is monetized is huge. And we've started off with private chefs. That's also big. Like whether people are using us, whether it's for events like my birthday, anniversary, I want to get my friends together. Or maybe like you said, it's a work event. Let's get some canapes. We're doing a Y Combinator event after. We're using it for that. Or for something for yourself. Actually, I would love for a chef to deliver very specific meals because I'm vegetarian or I eat Indian food, or actually I don't like this random stuff. I just love paneer and I want this and I want this specific stuff delivered to my house. And all that should be possible. But this is just private chefs. If you think of the next step and how big the catering industry is, how are people still finding potentially caterers for their wedding? It's word of mouth. You go on Instagram. You don't fully know, but you kind of know. You're then stressed about availability. Oh, they might get booked up. It's like the top 3 people that I can book. But what if you had a lot more options and it was very easy to do that? So I think ultimately we want to revolutionize access to catering industry for anyone, anywhere.
So you can just tell the passion that comes through that. So it's one of the things I'm judging people as when I was listening, you can tell just you really care about this problem, and you can see obviously you're on the path now to making that dream a reality. So we're going to move to quick fire questions now.
Okay.
So first one is, who are 3 British Asians you'd love to shout out you think people listening right now should be paying attention to?
Okay, so 3 people I'd love to shout out about, away from Heinin Zhang, who's my co-founder, are Ria Grover from Sequence. Incredible founder. She started Feeders and sold this platform actually to Compass Group. And now her new startup actually sort of is a competitor to Stripe. That's the easy way to put it. They are backed by A16Z. And yeah, she's absolutely incredible. The second founder is Murvi Iqbal. She's the founder of Hived HQ. They are building a global logistics actually unicorn. And what they do is make all of their fleets are actually e-fleets. So they're making it sustainable and very easy. And they have some like amazing contracts from ASOS, Zara, and things like that now. So doing really well. And the third person is Priyanka Gill. She's the CEO and co-founder of Good Glam Group, which is actually a unicorn in India. She's British Asian. She's my personal inspiration. I met her. She's incredible. And she understands a lot about, how like content, how people position themselves. And yeah, I have a lot to learn from her.
So next question. So I love all those people, by the way. And Hived HQ is coming on soon.
Amazing.
So what can people listening right now reach out to you about if they're looking for help or guidance?
I love consumer tech. I really feel like, because you can understand and visualize the customer. So product, I love product. Actually love taking insights from customers and building that into products. So I think any product related questions would love to answer. Also, I know a lot of people struggle with fundraising, and there are more women that need to get funded. It's like a fact. So love to help in any way I can. There are a lot of amazing angels we have on our cap table that have a lot of extensive sort of groups. So yeah, always happy to make those connections for fundraising. And third, if you need like any, I don't love the word mentorship, but if you're getting started and you just need to understand a little bit, or you're trying to make the leap, or you're like a seed stage founder, you need some help, happy to definitely be connected.
And then on the other side, is there something that you need help with right now, or that yhangry needs help with?
Great, love it. We are working a lot on our customer journey on the product side right now. So if you are someone who has worked with conversion rates and or UX background, please get in touch. We'd love to have a chat. Also, we are sort of streamlining our incentives for both customers and chefs, and like what it means, why they would come back, and whether that's like, I guess kind of creating like retention incentives. So people who have worked a lot to understand the incentives of like a two-sided platform, very fascinating. Please get in touch. And I think a lot of platforms exist here that have done this in the past really well, like Treatwell or like even Deliveroo, three-sided marketplace, loads of them. But would love to pick your brain. Or I guess the third is if you're in growth and you love us as a business and have ideas, I'd love to put you in touch with Heinin.
So really enjoyed this chat. Have you got any final words for the audience?
The only big advice I would give to someone who wants to start something that's right at the beginning, full of fears, there will be fears always in your life. And it's just a way of your body and your brain to protect you from dangers that actually don't even exist. Write down your fears, every one of them you have, and then write why that does not apply to every one of them. And then when you have that fear again, which you will inevitably, like the next day or the next week, just go back and read it and just stop it. So go through this fear exercise once, and then every time you have that fear again, just be like, actually, I've gone through this thinking already. And that will probably give you the ammo to get started, and then just get started. The easiest way to build confidence really is to do every day. When I got started, actually someone from an MD from Barclays told me, go to a cafe every single day with your laptop and the magic will happen. And it really did. It just meant carving out the time and then just doing anything and getting started. So really the way to, get started, do more is to do. So do.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes the world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission, and you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.